Hello, good morning. It is Sabbath morning, June 29th. And so it is the end of week 3 of Youth Rush. I can't believe how fast this is going, but I think this is a little bit askew. Okay. But I did want to do another video on what happened on Thursday because I did a really quick one last night and wasn't really able to elaborate. And so I'll go over both stories that I said, but in more detail. So I was dropped off in businesses in the morning. One of the first businesses I went to was, I believe, Rite Aid. And I met a lady in the parking lot. And so I started canvassing her, and I find out that she was Seventh-day Adventist, or grew up Seventh-day Adventist, but wasn't really practicing anymore. And then so I kind of just talked to her, told her what we were doing, kind of a little bit more about her background. She said she didn't have any money, but she was gonna get cash. And so it was Dollar Tree. And so I canvassed other people at Dollar Tree. And then she finished up shopping, and then she and her son came up to me and said, oh, she told her son, give this to the lady. And so she gave me a donation, and I was able to give her the Living in the Sunlight. After that, there were several Japanese businesses that I visited. And so I was speaking in Japanese. I was able to get, at one of the businesses, I met this lady. She was saying, she was, you could see that she was in a rush, and she was like running all over the office. She's like, I just need to get out of here. I told her about story time. And then she goes, and then she couldn't find her wallet. And then so I move on to the next business, and then like 2 doors down, she opens her office door again and say, hey, hold on, I found my wallet. And so she gives me a donation, and she's able to get story time. I also went to a grocery. It was something like Albertsons or Smart and Final, some grocery. And so I was in one of the last aisles, and I see these 2 gentlemen. And so I speak to the first one. He doesn't get anything, but he does give a donation, and so he gets the drop down. And then I moved to the end of the aisle to speak to the other gentleman, and he was an older guy, and he was replying in broken English. And I had encountered a lot of Japanese people in the area, and I was like, Nihonjin desu ka? Which is, are you Japanese? And then he says, so desu. And I'm like, oh, you can speak Japanese. And I was like, hi, and skoshi shimasu, which is, I speak a little bit. And then so I start canvassing him in like Janglish. I don't know, a little bit of Japanese and English. And then when I say Loma Linda, because I was showing him habits that heal, and when I said Loma Linda, he goes, oh, Seventh-day Adventist. And then I was like, oh, are you Seventh-day Adventist? And he's like, no, I'm Christian. But he had a teacher who was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I was like, the Christian party, like, oh, you're Christian, I'm Christian, all that. And then so I show him Peace Above the Storm as well. And then I was like explaining like the donation and ranges, like, 20 dollar donation, Nihon, and then and then I said, like, $10 donation, you can get either one of the bucks. And then he looks at them, and like he's holding both Peace Above the Storm and Habits, and then he's like, and I was really hoping he would get Peace because I want to get that devotionals out. And then he goes ahead and then picks Peace Above the Storm. So it was just a beautiful thing. And then being able to do kind of a Japanese canvas was pretty cool. So I leave there, keep canvassing some businesses, and then I get to this there was like a row of Japanese businesses. There was no one in the front room. A guy comes out of the back. So I headed towards him. I hand him a Habits that Heal, told him what we were doing, and he's like, oh, let me ask my manager. And then so he asked this manager in Japanese, and then she was like, I'm not really interested. And then I was like, okay, let me leave you guys with this. So I gave them each a glow track, and I was like, I'm walking to the manager, I say, 日本でどこに住んでましたか? Which is, in Japan, where did you live? And she was like, 話しますか? And like, Osaka. And then so I was like, oh, really? I visited Osaka last year. over spring break. And it's like, oh, and then the guy turns and he's like, are you, I forget the term that he used. It was like Ray something, and I was like, whatever that term was, Ego de Nandeska, which is what is it in English? What does it mean in English? And he says, oh, Japanese living, pretty much Japanese American. And I was like, oh no, I'm not. I'm Filipino. But I've studied a little bit of Japanese, and then I'm going to Japan next year. And so they were so really excited. They still didn't get anything, but they did get a glow track, and it was an interesting conversation. And so in the afternoon, we dropped off in this neighborhood, and one of the first houses I went to was a Filipino lady. She was 91 years old, but she was still going strong, and she didn't have any money on her, but I was able to. I can't remember if she got a drop down or if it was just a glow track, but she did, but I was able to pray with her, and so, and she prayed for me as well, and her prayer was like, Lord, how amazing it is that we met, that us two ladies, she said, this young lady and me being very old, but that, and like different circumstances, but the two of us met on this afternoon, and that we're from the same country, and so it was just a beautiful prayer, and I think, especially when I talk to Filipinos, it's kind of closer to my heart. We love everybody, but there's a special connection when you're talking to someone from who has a similar background or similar circumstances somehow. And so it was just a really beautiful experience to be able to talk to her and minister to this lady who is 91 years old, and from the same country as I am. Later that night, I was able to get a health set out. So a guy gave a $20 donation for habits, and then he was like, oh, not really doing much for my health, but I'm really interested in this, blah blah. And then so I give him the 8 Lost DVD as well, because he said he wasn't much of a reader, and so he got the health habits that heal as well as the 8 Lost DVD. So I got that health set out. Later that evening, I went across this house, and it was another Filipino family. And then when I offered Simply Fresh, the guy's like, Simply Fresh, that's actually one of our clients. And he was like, worked in LA, and so he was somehow like within the process, like involved in the process of publishing it. I don't know if it was like the technical, like actually publishing the book, or what his involvement was. He didn't elaborate too much. And then so he's like, what are you doing? And explained the whole canvas. And when he found out that I also had religious material, he was like, oh no, we don't support a church, any denomination church. And then so pretty much he said, I'm atheist. And then I was like, okay, how come? What led you to that conclusion? And then he explained to me how there was so much hypocrisy in the church, how all these multi-million-dollar preachers who have jets and whatever. And I said, they're just like making money, and then kind of like abusing the people. And he said, that's not how a church is supposed to function. The church is supposed to be giving to the people, taking care of the people, not the people taking care and making pretty much fat its preachers. Which there is truth to that, and it's true that there's hypocrisy in the church, but it's also true anywhere else in the world. And it was kind of just a little bit heartbreaking that this man turned, and he's like, oh, I study all these different religions. He even had some Adventist friends, and then he said like, but it was just because he knew about God, and it wasn't that he just left the church and was practicing on his own, but he said he was already atheist. And to me, I've experienced some things where it's like, oh, this is so hypocritical, or how can somebody who claims to be a Christian do this? And then, wanting to kind of walk away from the church, but I never came to the point where I wanted to walk away from my faith. And I think because your religion, your faith, is something between you and God. It's not something between you and other people. And so even if person X is being hypocritical, person Y is stealing, person Z is giving this really, I'm such a good Christian front, when you know he's doing the other stuff in the back, and not living his life according to what he says. That doesn't matter, because who we follow is Jesus Christ, and that's really the only relationship. I mean, okay, and not the only relationship, because it is important to have fellowship with others and all that. But it's really our relationship with him that matters, and our salvation is through him. So even if people do all these bad things, that doesn't matter. That it affects us in the sense that we should be sad, and we have examples of what not to follow, but it shouldn't drive us away from God, because these people, they aren't gods, they aren't proper representatives of him. And so we shouldn't leave God because some fake did something, you know. And it can be really challenging to see people who say they're Christians and they turn around and do all these bad things. It is really challenging, and it is a problem. But it's really sad when people leave the church for that reason. And then so he did end up taking a glow track, and I hope that that plants a seed. But that really did affect me that night. And it's like, and then he said, I would be happy to give you a donation. He's like, if you just say that this is for your schooling, that this has nothing to do with your church, because he didn't want the money, because the office processes our paperwork and all that stuff, and all the donations. And it's like, he didn't want any organization touching our money. And he said, like, if you say this is for you, this is for your education, and it wouldn't support the ministry in any way and all this stuff, he's like, I will give you a donation. And I said, I love to, but I am doing this because I believe in these books. I believe in the power, and I believe it can change lives. I mean, I know people who didn't commit suicide, who were going down the wrong path, and they read these books. And I really do believe in literature evangelism and the power and how it can bring you closer to God. And so I pretty much said, that's why I'm not gonna do that, because I believe in these books and that the message that we're trying to preach. And then so I left that door. Later that night, I did come to this door. The father answers. He gives a $10 donation for the Habits that Heal. I move on to the next door, and then I see like a little girl come out. She's about 12 years old, and then I see that the dad is behind her, and she said, "Oh, you already knocked at our house. My dad answered the door, but I wanted to give a donation." And she gives me a $20 donation. It's like, "Oh, with this donation you can actually give 2 books." She's like, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I just really wanted to help out. And when it's a young person doing this, especially, I mean, this has only ever happened to me twice, but it's something special when it's the kids who want to give. And I told her, at least let me give you 1 book. And I showed her Peace Above the Storm, and I said, this is a really beautiful book. This is my favorite devotional, blah, blah. And so she gets the Peace Above the Storm. And so that was kind of how I ended my night, and it was beautiful. I did want to share some testimonies from my other friends as well. They are amazing. They were, already at the end of the night, and they convinced their leader to go a few more minutes. And there's, the stories of the last door, the last person that they're able to reach, the answer book that goes out, the devotional sets that went out, and I am inspired and touched by their dedication to have that kind of passion, that love to say, when it's we have power hour, which is your last hour of canvassing, and you say, run to the doors, and then, especially when it's the last minute and you're just trying to get a few more doors done, you reach a few more people, and you're just running from house to house. and then for them to have kind of this passion for it, this desire to keep going even when, you know, the workday is already over, um, I think is amazing, and it's inspiring to me. And I just pray that the Lord would also kind of give me that love for people, that desire to reach a few more houses, reach a few more doors, and to increase my faith. And so, anyway, that's it for week 3. Yesterday, Friday, was a little bit more relaxing. We got pedicures. I got purple on my toes, which you can't really see because I am not that kind of contortionist. Let's see. Just like showing my feet to camera. Yeah, I got purple. I also, you know, because I get to go home on Thursday nights because I have doctor appointments on Friday. I also got to go to the chiropractor for lunch yesterday. We went to this mall, and then so there was like this Italian shop thing, and so we got pizza and Greek salad, and it was pretty good. And then I got ice cream, like vanilla ice cream dipped in chocolate, and so it was it was a pretty great day. And then we came home, had devotions. Oh, and Alyssa also taught me how to do makeup yesterday, so that was an interesting thing. You can check out our video together. So yeah, happy Sabbath, and that's the end of week 3. Bye, love you.